My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to New Light Streaming Love and Sassy Seer Sheila, as this will be seen in both places. This is the ego, the great illusion that seeks to destroy you, by Jason Gray. For centuries, spiritual seekers, philosophers, and mystics have warned of a hidden adversary within the human experience, an invisible force that whispers in our minds, fuels our fears, and keeps us shackled to suffering. This adversary is the ego. We are led to believe that our ego is a natural part of us, an essential component of who we are. I have to stop right here and say that, yeah, I kind of feel like it is. So that's very interesting. I don't have no idea where this is going. Society tells us that it is our identity, our sense of self. This is the great deception. The ego is not you. It has never been you. It is an artificial construct, a parasite that latches onto the mind and feeds on your illusions, insecurities, and attachments. I could see where that would be a perspective. Absolutely. I recognize that my ego has been programmed and conditioned my entire life. The whole entire 63 years I've lived on this planet, I've been programmed and conditioned to believe certain things, to behave in certain ways. And that is a part of the ego, but it is also part of my personality. It is part of the, what I will say, the focusing mechanism that goes into being human, if you will, for me at this moment of now. I hold all things very loosely anymore. So back to Jason's writings here. When unrecognized, the ego becomes your greatest enemy. I do feel like that's a true statement. It operates in the shadows, using the mind as its primary weapon, manipulating your perceptions, distorting reality, and keeping you trapped in suffering. Absolutely, I can see where there was a period in my life where my entire perspective was from a victim point of view, that things would happen to me rather than for me, if you will. The ego does not seek your growth, happiness, or peace. It seeks only to sustain itself, and it will do so at your expense. If left unchecked, it will consume you, drive you into despair, and ultimately lead you to destroy yourself. I do feel like that's a true statement as well. To free yourself, you must first see the ego for what it truly is. The ego is not you. It's not wholly you, no. And it has been programmed and conditioned to believe it is. That's something I do feel very strongly. From birth, here he goes, we are conditioned to believe in a false identity, a self-image built from external influences, our name, our roles, our beliefs, our achievements, and even our failures. Agreed. This artificial identity is what most people call, quote, the self, but in reality, it is nothing more than a mental construct. It is not who you are. It is merely who you think you are. Ego thrives on this deception. It convinces you that you are your thoughts, your emotions, your labels, and your story. And I would say for myself, until I realized that it was, because I still feel like my ego is in here. By no means have I killed that sucker, because it is a part of who I am. It is also, uh, because of its ability to be programmed and conditioned, who is in control of it. That is where it is for me, at any rate. It makes you believe that you are separate from others, that you must defend your identity at all costs, and that your worth is determined by external validation. I truly feel like that's the programming and conditioning of society. I no longer feel that way. I did at one point. I don't have the desire to kill my ego, which, because that never sounded or felt correct to me. I will say that it's more of a recoding, a reconditioning of that which would be termed the ego for me. What I see myself doing. If you strip away everything the ego claims as, quote, you, your name, your memories, your opinions, your possessions, what remains? Consciousness, awareness. True, but I don't think that that consciousness or awareness is unaffected by all the experiences the ego has had. And quite frankly, I've come to feel that that's the entire point of the existence, and why I seek to make my ego my ally, my friend, convincing it that it is much better to ride shotgun and allow the soul to drive the vehicle, not the hurts, the traumas, the programming and conditioning that has fed it the lies that it's been fed its entire life. Now, that may be just a coping mechanism that I have designed for myself. I don't know. But that's okay, because what, even if it is, it's working for me at this juncture. Back to the writing here. The silent observer that has been watching all along. This is the real you. The ego is merely a mask, an illusion imposed upon the mind. The ego and the mind, a deadly alliance. The mind is a powerful tool, capable of immense creativity, logic, and insight. When the ego gains control of the mind, it corrupts its purpose. I feel like that's quite frankly true. Instead of serving as an instrument of higher understanding, the mind becomes a servant of deception. Ego floods the mind with endless chatter, doubts, worries, criticism, and false narratives that distort your perception of reality. It uses the past to trap you in regret and the future to keep you in fear. I would have to agree with all of that wholeheartedly. It prevents you from living in the present, where true life exists. It creates an identity out of suffering, convincing you that your pain defines you and that you must cling to it. It feeds the illusion of control, making you believe that your worth is based on external success, validation, or superiority over others. The ego does not care about your well-being. It only cares about survival. It will do whatever it takes to preserve its false existence, even if it means destroying you in the process. But again, I guess that's true if left unchecked. For myself, I don't have the desire to kill anything, to eliminate anything. I think everything serves. And so for me, I have been in the midst of a recoding, a reprogramming and conditioning of my ego, allowing it to serve me, the total, all of me, due to the fact that this is an experience that I'm not ready to be over with yet. And quite frankly, the ego is going to be here for the entirety of the ride, making it my ally and friend. Now that's where it's at for me. How the ego seeks to destroy you. The ego's ultimate goal is not your happiness, not your alignment, but enlightenment, but your perpetual suffering, because suffering keeps it alive. Okay, that is a perspective one might hold. I don't view myself as suffering anymore, not like I did. So it's a change in perspective for me. Here is how it accomplishes this. The ego thrives on fear and insecurity. The ego cannot survive in peace. It needs chaos, conflict, and fear to sustain itself. Again, that is a perspective that one might hold. I feel as though my ego is still intact. It's just different now. It feels wholly different to me. It constantly whispers worst case scenarios, makes you doubt yourself, and convinces you that you are never enough. It makes you fear failure, so you never take risks. It makes you fear rejection, so you never open your heart. It makes you fear the unknown, so you remain trapped in mediocrity. Well, if all of that was true, I wouldn't have been married 3 times. And if all of that was true, I certainly wouldn't be doing this, what I'm doing now, in any way, shape, or form. I don't think. Every moment of self-doubt, every instance of hesitation, every paralyzing fear, it is all the work of the ego. The ego creates division and conflict. Ego thrives on separation. Well, in truth, the only thing that separates us from each other is the physical vessel and the time spent inside the physical vessel, because it allows a very specific perspective on creation, in my view. So I view the ego more as a focusing mechanism, and it can either serve one perspective or another. Actually, not just two, but I think it can serve from many different perspectives. It's just which perspective will I choose to hold in any given moment? Because we are multidimensional, and those perspectives are like on a sliding scale at any given moment. The ego thrives on separation. It tells you that you are different, superior, or inferior to others. We are all different, I feel like that. And that is by design in many ways. We are, but we are not, because it is a multidimensional situation, I feel. It creates us versus them mentalities, fueling conflict between individuals, nations, and ideologies. I do feel like that is true if left unchecked. It convinces you that your identity must be defended, that you must win arguments, prove your worth, and destroy opposition. This is all a distraction. In truth, there is no enemy but the ego itself. And see, I don't see the ego as my enemy. And again, that's just a matter of perspective that everyone gets to choose for themselves. The ego traps you in endless desire. The ego convinces you that happiness exists outside of you, always in the next achievement, the next possession, the next validation. Again, maybe this is a function of my being 63. Maybe it's a function of my having had the kind of life that I have had. I don't feel like that is necessarily so once perspectives change. It keeps you running on an endless treadmill of desires, never allowing you to be satisfied. If you achieve success, it tells you it is not enough. If you acquire wealth, it makes you fear losing it. If you gain approval, it makes you dependent upon it. The ego does not allow contentment because contentment would mean its death. Well, see, I've proven for myself that that's not necessarily so. I live in contentment. Do I desire things? Oh, sure. Would I like to have more money than $1,500 a month? Oh, absolutely, I would. But it's not something that keeps me from being satisfied or happy in my existence. The ego resists change and growth. As long as it's running amok, yes. True transformation requires shedding the false self. The ego fights this at every turn. And that may be, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's not right, because that could be why I'm holding the perspective I'm holding. I do realize that that is a possibility there. It makes you cling to old patterns, unhealthy relationships, and outdated beliefs because you let go, because to let go would mean losing its grip over you. Whenever you try to grow, to evolve, to rise above suffering, the ego whispers, you can't, you are not ready, this is who you are. These are all lies. That is true. It will try. And I guess there's been a fair amount of, and that's where the kind of work, shadow work, healing, what I've been doing with myself, working with myself, asking myself questions. I've developed a relationship with the larger portion of me and my relationship with my housemate and with others who are also on this sort of path. I have been relentlessly asking to be shown all of me. The ego, the divinity, the little girl, the wounded inner child, all of these things that have gone into the makeup of what makes me, me. And that's why the conscious conversations started in the first place, because it helped me see me in my totality and work with those parts that I realized I was holding as victim. Can't do anything about anything you're not willing to look at. At least that's certainly my view of that. The ego is terrified of your awakening because once you see through its deception, it loses its power forever. Well, yeah, sure. If you if you're setting out to try to kill something, of course it's going to run like hell. But if you're setting out to make something your ally, friend, and you show it how, oh, life can absolutely be beautiful. It doesn't have to be like this. Then I think there's a whole different, again, for me, it's a matter of perspective. How to transcend the ego and reclaim your true self. The ego is a master illusionist, but its greatest weakness is awareness. Yes. And it's not a one and done deal, man. I'm in the midst of it myself. The moment you recognize the ego as separate from you, its control begins to dissolve. Well, I think that's a true statement. Absolutely. Here is how you can break free. Become the observer. You are not your thoughts, emotions, or fears. Yes, that's true. You're not. I really do feel like, and that's why I got to the point where I ask myself questions. And in some of the conversations that we've had over the years, not all of, and most of them are not on this channel or anywhere else for that matter. YouTube sought to do away with that, so they took my channel down. Now, someday, at some point, maybe those conversations will go back up. I don't know. We'll see. I do have them. But yes, it was difficult at first for me personally, and sometimes still is, to tell the difference between which voice am I hearing. My larger, more expanded voice, or my tiny little scared ego voice that he's referring to here, because both of those do exist within me. So, you are not your thoughts, emotions, or fears. You are the awareness behind them. Observe your thoughts without identifying them. That was very difficult and still is sometimes. Recognize when the ego is speaking and detach from its influence. Actually work with it in very many ways. Every time you witness the ego at work, its grip weakens. Yes, and again, for me, I work with it because there's been a lifetime of habitual thinking, thoughts, feelings, traumas that have all been built up that shaped and formed how that ego actually behaves. And so for me, I noticed it was not a one and done sort of situation. I still work with my ego. I still find bits and pieces that I need to examine and work with to change the perspective. Silence the mind. That is a very difficult thing. I'm not going to lie, for me, even still sometimes. The ego's primary weapon is mental noise. Counter this with stillness. That is absolutely good. Practice meditation to separate from the ego's illusions. Spend time in nature away from distractions. Cultivate moments of deep silence and presence. In stillness, the ego has no power. Let go of identity attachments. You are not your name, your past, your labels, or your achievements. Let them go. Stop defining yourself by external factors. Detach from the need for validation and approval. Accept that you are beyond definition, an infinite being experiencing life. Embrace the present moment. The ego lives in the past and the future, but it cannot survive in the now. Focus entirely on the present moment. Do not dwell on past regrets or future worries. Recognize that this moment is all that exists, and in it you are free. Very, very true. All very true and great to keep in mind. The final awakening, ego death and liberation. To awaken is to see through the illusion of the ego completely. When you transcend the ego, you return to your true nature, pure consciousness, free from suffering, free from illusion. The ego does not die easily. It will fight, it will resist, it will try to reclaim control. Once you see it for what it is, it can never deceive you again. The moment you fully awaken, you are free. In that freedom, the ego dissolves like a shadow vanishing in the night. Well, I have never claimed to be awakened or enlightened for on any sort of the imagination, any stretch of the imagination. I feel it is not a one and done sort of situation either. I've never felt comfortable with the idea of killing the ego. It is a way of focusing the divinity into this reality that we are experiencing. And by making it my ally and my friend and allowing it to experience life along with the totality of me, my life has changed in so many ways. It's been the most enjoyable years of my life. I no longer feel like I'm suffering at the hands of anybody, including my own self or my ego. When things happen, or things that maybe I'm not all that great crazy about, I keep being shown different things. And so everyone will go about this particular thing quite differently. I am in no way saying that Jason is wrong. I'm saying that I feel as though he holds it a little bit differently than I do, which, hey, is bound to happen. Because the truth of the matter is, for me, the entirety of the point of this existence is, in my view, for creation, the divinity that is experiencing this realm through this vessel. The whole point, the entire point, is the experiences, is this thing we call life, the human life. And we can experience it from that perspective, or that perspective, or that perspective, or that perspective. It's all a matter of not just circumstances and happenstance, as some would think or say. For me, anyway, that's the way I hold it in these moments of now. I keep being shown, I keep asking to be shown different things, and I am. And the way I hold things changes all the time, because it's much easier to change a concept if it's held openly rather than a solid belief system. Solid belief systems are very difficult to change, in my view. Again, for the reasons of the fact that after 63 years on the planet, things become habit. They're programmed and conditioned in here. And unless one opens oneself to being able to see all of that, then the impetus is to continue doing that. So And I will tell you too that part of the reason I'm give to record this today, because I've seen this, Jason and I actually had a bit of a discussion one time, very slight, about ego once before. And he knows that this is how I feel about the ego, because I'm in the midst of working with mine. Is that something else came across my path today as well. And I was nudged in that moment to address this within myself. So that's what this is. I hope that you will realize that it's all a matter of perspective. Your individual perspective is absolutely going to vary. Your mileage with all of this will absolutely vary, and it's meant to. For me, there are so many ways and methods to work with our divinity and the ego and have them serve each other, and therefore all of creation. This is the way I hold it in these moments of now. I hope that made sense. At any rate, I hope that you will move towards that which brings you joy, that's which draws your attention, because there is something there for you in that. And I highly recommend, if you're anything like me, asking oneself questions in that silence sometimes, for me anyway, and beginning to recognize what voice is what, which again was not all that easy. Until we meet again, my friends, be well.